Good evening, everyone. This is the Translator news, and today is September 4th. Today with me, we have a guest, Feng Zhishang, 7 Miles, and Kwang. We'll talk about updated news, and we'll talk about what we have learned from the live stream from Mr. Miles ago. And today we'll spend some time to continue our program we have started a few days ago. We'll talk about the House Resolution 500, the 100 years of thing about the CCP. So first, I want to start with Feng Zhishang. Could you share some news with us?
Hello, Rosemary. Hello, everyone. The first, I just bring the one news about from U.S. According to the Johns Hopkins University, on Saturday, 4th of September, the total number of CCP virus cases worldwide exceeded 219 million, with more than 4.55 million deaths. So White House COVID-19 vaccine booster program, which could begin this month, may initially be limited to the Pfizer vaccine. Joe Biden is expected to start the 100 million doses booster program on September 20th. But no other vaccine make other than Pfizer has been authorized. So a panel of experts providing expert advice on vaccines to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, is scheduled to meet on September 17 to discuss the licensing of the Pfizer booster. So Moderna only submitted its data to the regulator on Wednesday. Anthony Fauci, Biden's chief medical advisor, told the media on Friday that it appears that Moderna wouldn't be able to provide data in time for the September 20th meeting. So Johnson & Johnson has not yet filled any application for the booster. So with cases of Delta variant on the rise, so Biden administration is concerned that this could represent diminishing the vaccine protection for those who fully vaccinated. So in other words, means they want to licensing the Pfizer to be the only booster vaccine. So you can see other than the Pfizer, they all not passed or not on time uploading the application, etc. So they are kind of sign of Pfizer going to be the only one booster vaccine in the future. Okay, back to Rosemary.
Okay, thank you, Feng Zhishang, for sharing this news. I don't know what is going on with the world. We know this antidote, but nobody actually care about this and just keep pushing, this vaccine. Next, I want to ask 7 Miles to share some news with us. 7 Miles, please.
Yes, so the first news I would like to share is about the CCP's poisonous vaccines. So on September the 3rd, the Deputy Director of the CCP's National Agency for International Development Cooperation, Deng Boqing, said the CCP is exporting and providing the toxic vaccines to 105 countries and 4 international organizations. And also, it's been shipping for a long time, so the total number of vaccines being shipped is reaching 900 million doses, so ranking the number 1 in the world in terms of shipment of the vaccines. So on the same day, the director of the Medical and Pharmaceutical R&D Research Center of the CCP's National Health Commission, Zheng Zhongwei, said, this year the CCP has determined that it will provide the whole world with 2 billion vaccines, including Sinovac and national Sinopharm's vaccines. Up to now, the CCP has already completed its goal of reaching 1 billion. So this means that CCP is still 1 billion doses away from this goal, and we need to keep fight and wake up more people about the toxic nature of the CSP's vaccines. The murderers, they're not good for the people, and we need to also push the narratives about the truth of the virus and about the vaccines, and most importantly, the antidote. And so we can wake up more people, so we can keep fighting to prevent the harms that the CSP's vaccines would do to the people. The second news I will share is kind of news that's circulating recently on the internet about the popularity of the artemisinin piperacin pills. So there's a news circulating on the internet saying that the artemisinin piperacin pills has become the first choice, the top choice for the international students in the West to fight against the COVID. So in this regard, we see that we see that in the Google trend, in other search engines, that artemisinin has been searched a lot by many people right after Mr. Miles Gore's revelation at the end of August. So this shows that the global reactions to Miles Gore's revelation about the artemisinin being the antidote is unprecedentedly big, and we cannot overlook its impact. Although the news circulating on the internet didn't mention Mr. Miles Gore, the whistleblowers movement, or the NFSC at all, but we know it is us, the whistleblowers movement, the news, Federal State of China, that are driving the narrative about this antidote. So we should keep working on it and change the world. Sorry, I think. Okay, so this is all the news I would like to share. So back to you, Rosemary. You look a little bit small in a very nice cabin.
Me?
Wang Qishan's playing, right?
Me? Wow. Okay. So what happened?
Okay, so our audience there's a little bit technical glitches, so we'll be back in a couple minutes. So, Corner, could you please share with everybody the news, and we'll wait for Rosemary to come back.
Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, thank you, 7 Miles. So the news I'm bringing today is Quebec's vaccine passport goes into effect, restricting most public life for the unvaccinated. So starting yesterday, proof of vaccination will be as much of an everyday necessity in Quebec as a wallet or a house key when leaving the house. According to a September 1st report in the CBC, participants in most public lives, from drinking beers to playing badminton, will be required to show a digital or paper document called COVID-19 vaccination passport. And other provinces, including British Columbia, Manitoba, and Ontario, are preparing to implement their own vaccination passport system in the coming days and weeks. And in Quebec, the list of non-essential activities banned for the unvaccinated is extensive, including restaurants, movie theaters, gyms, team sports, and indoor pools are now banned for those who are now not fully vaccinated. We know that the upcoming Canadian federal election day is September the 20th, and many large-scale events have been staged across the country protesting the forced mandatory vaccine passport. Some large employers, such as banks and federally subsidized companies, have made it mandatory for employees to take the COVID vaccine or face termination. And Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau is currently campaigning for re-election and told the reporter on August the 17th that Canadians who refuse the vaccination will face consequences. He has been trying to promote mandatory vaccine passport and mandatory vaccines for everybody, and there has been talks of injecting school children. He even briefly stopped his tour plan due to the safety concern after protesters showed up to heckle him in Bolton, Ontario on August 27th. The mandatory vaccine passport policy in Canada has raised strong social opposition, and the mainstream media fully support the government's policy, which has completely angered a part of the Canadian public. And the question is, why do Canadians need to be vigilant for the fourth wave, even if they have been fully vaccinated? And if the vaccine works, they won't have to get infected or fear of anything. If the vaccine is ineffective, why is a vaccine passport used to coerce people into getting all the vaccinations? So this is just a simple logic, which sadly some people don't understand. So that's the news I want to share. Is Rosemary back?
You know what? We'll just do that because I don't know what happened. This is something, maybe I clicked something wrong and it become this. I dropped out and come back again. It doesn't work. How's that? We're just going like that. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very sorry about that. I must click the different view because I tried to see myself. But anyway, we'll just do that. So next, I want to, could you play the video Taliban video?
这回习这一招和王岐这一招太绝了，塔利班这招你们别看，是共产党近几年打出最漂亮的一拳出去。美国将近10万亿美元玩了几十年的一个中亚、南亚的最佳战略地带，有效的遏制了恐怖分子，一夜之间被共产党彻底控制，而且几乎是零代价，而且获得。美国的飞机、坦克早就到北京去了，现在在新疆新疆大盒子基地，整个大盒子基地地下室全部是美国的这个悍马飞机，都过去了，3天都没过，而且塔利班说你要啥给你啥，你去看看大风口，现在大风口这个路上已经成什么路了？不用修路了完全被压，美国不知道，美国都知道，是共产党的军事和共产党的这一次的在塔利班获取的东西，过去30年的总和，总和。塔利班这件事情把中东逊尼派、什叶派彻底拿下，2派都拿下。你跟我不跟我，不跟我那派打你，跟不跟我不跟那派打你，2派全拿下。
现在黑屏了。
哦，嗨。The technical difficulty, and we're back. Next, I want to invite Feng Zicang to share what she has learned from Mr. Mao's live stream about the Taliban. Feng Zicang, please.
Okay. Thank you, Rosemary. These days we had a lot of live show from Mao School, and it's a lot of to learn and a lot of to digest. So according to today's this part of it, it's mainly talk about the Taliban's situation and what's the relation with the Taliban and the CCP. So since U.S. withdraw from Afghanistan, all the 22 trillion US dollars that U.S. government spent in 20 years in Afghanistan, at the moment it seems to be end up like this. So even they can't fully evacuate their own citizens from Afghanistan. So it's kind of administration of Joe Biden's had a really not good decision from my point of view. All the fighter aircraft, HIMARS, tanks, all left behind in Taliban, and the Taliban took, you can see advantages from it without spending one penny. And the most interesting and the important part is all these firearms, fighters, and tanks, they're all in the hand of CCP. Is that makes you feel funny? Yes. For sure, because it's just within 3 days, all these things is already transferred from Afghanistan to China. And which, according to Moscow's intelligence information, all these things is all in Xinjiang area. They're called the Dahe military base. So you can say how good relation Taliban and the CCP together. So they always be a brother together, you know. So it's obviously since the first day, the CCP is very happy with Taliban win and very happy about the American lose, you know. So exactly, so this is a backbone of all this crisis, you know. The China CCP is always supporting terrorists, so that's no doubt about it. And no, the whole world can see it directly from all the news now, because the leader of Taliban and have a cooperate with CCP leaders together. So we saw some pictures as well. So there are no doubt they are all terrorists. So that's why all this pandemic, all because of the CCP regime. So that's why we need to take down them. And even the Washington has now frozen nearly 9.5 million US dollars in Afghanistan government reserve, and International Monetary Fund has cut off funding to the Afghanistan, including early 5 million US dollars that was due to be released when the Taliban took control. So all this money was frozen. But on September 3rd, Taliban spokesman Mujahid said the CCP is our most important partner, and it's a fundamental and unusual opportunity for us because the Chinese Communist Party is willing to invest and rebuild our country. And he also expressed that Taliban's expect for the participation of the CCP of China in the reconstruction of Afghanistan, which is the country's passport to the world. So yeah, CCP colluded with Taliban, and all this like Middle Asia countries, just like Turkey, is the first country admit the Taliban is official government of Afghanistan. So you can say all these countries and followed up after Taliban, after CCP. So the whole world is going to crazy, right? Is all this evil region cannot unite it together. This is something we never expected, but it's happening in front of us every day. So all these Middle East countries, especially also, include Russia, because this is a founder of this all regions. I mean, the whole group of people in this area, and even Europe will join to the new economic group. So that's, shocked me after I watched this video. So you can say the China's internationalize of finance and political, and also the just like a challenging of U.S. finance. So this is a kind of show off, and it's really threatened to the U.S. economic. So I'm not from the financial background, but due to all this situation, it seems to be very bad to the U.S. dollar, because the China wanted to the Chinese RMB become the international currency, and the CCP is push a lot of effort to try to make it reality. And from now on, all this situation seems to leaning to the CCP direction. I don't know how to explain that, but Xi Jinping aims for the imminent collapse of the U.S. finance and the Western economic. And before it collapses, Xi Jinping, it seems to be have set it up for U.S. like kind of start with knockout about the Americans' pension fund, about 5.6 trillion, and hit the U.S. Until its economic to collapse. So it just target into certain area, certain very weak part of U.S. Economic. So you can say the CCP really using all kind of way, try to make a trap to US, not only military in Taliban, but also in the economic of all kind of, just like pension funds, etc. So when American fund found out that all the CCP regime going to destroy the US, I think that is a time the US will wake up. So in other words, so when the US really wake up, so that's when the CCP regime is disappear, I guess. And it was coming out of the Beijing Stock Exchange, something like that. I'm not so familiar with finance, but so far I can just share about this part and the situation in the Taliban's, So hopefully this bad situation will be changing somehow, and the US can strong again and wake up and to be the leader of the whole world and give us a democracy, give us a peaceful life. So it is something really matters. Okay, back to Rosemary.
Okay, so because this technical difficulty, we went to play the video, so we start the program a little bit different. Kwana, have you shared the news with us?
Yes, I have shared the news.
Okay, sorry about that. So, okay, so next I want to ask to play video about 平安。
从2017年我说马明哲被调查，到今天真正被调查，大家要知道，马明哲起源于平安保险。到今天，你说那么多年，你们知道吗？他每个月如果低于100万人入他的保险的话，他就活不下去了。很多年以前，我们当时到这个深圳去啊，就去喝酒，我就问他们，我说你这个平安能活下去的基础是什么？第一，朝里有人；第二，他说我们每天得加入100万人的就加入。保险行业化叫什么？这叫牵牛，能牵进来100个傻牛过来。你想想这几十年怎么过来的啊？那么现在平安保险集团已经成为继银行、保险、证券、投行更重要的事情有陆金所。陆金所是一个大的所谓的一个中高档的玩土豪钱的投资基金，蚂蚁金服是穷人的基金啊，它是土豪基金，就能分得很清楚了，就玩大客户的啊。人家控股汇丰银行，美国你有摩根斯丹利，那就是欧洲就是有最重要的就是汇丰，而且世界上好多银行它都参股。不但如此，它拥有多少金融产品呢？7万种金融产品。你去想想，最早的温家宝的娘是他的股东，最后温家宝的娘找了段永红，大家知道被抓了，跟我们的好朋友凯西还都是好朋友。还有我的哥们儿车峰戴向龙家族，江家、朱镕基家，你去找去吧。李长春家、张德江家、张高丽家、黄华华家，整个平安集团的股东的变化几乎横跨过去所谓的改革开放的前30年、后30年，后30年的全包了。广东无一人没有掺和的。如果说你没有掺和平安，你不够格。政治局委员常务没有一家不掺和的，只是什么方式？就连温家宝能拿着娘去参股，你想什么概念？你像贾庆林啦，你像这人他没有不掺和的，只是给他多和少的问题。
So in this video, we hear Mr. Miles go talk about Ping An, which is an insurance company in China, and it involved with like almost all the top Chinese leaders. So next, I want to ask 7 Miles to share, maybe explain what is going on with this, because Mr. Miles gave us so many information. Someone like me, I need the explanation. I need more people help me to get better understanding. So 7 Miles, could you please help us understand? I don't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry about the technical thing. So let's get started to the Ping An. So just a little bit background about the Ping An Group. Ping An Group was founded by a guy called Peter Ma Mingzhe back in 1988. So Ping An Group is a Chinese holding conglomerate whose subsidiaries include fields like insurance, banking, asset management, financial services, healthcare, auto services, and smart city. So this company is headquartered in Shenzhen, in South China, the city where it became famous after the open and reform policy of the CCP. The name of the Ping An company means safe and sound. So it started with an insurance company by selling insurance, and then later it entered into the financial sector, and finally it is marching into the field of technologies. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later in terms of the acquisitions made by Ping An recently. So this August, actually just a few days ago, it is circulated on the internet that Ping An is being investigated by the CCP, and has been rumors saying that Ping An is turning in some documentations. Normally you won't turn in any documentation for the government authorities until you are under sort of investigation. Although in communist China, because it's not necessarily a rule of law, I mean, as you say, it's definitely by no means rule of law, it's ruled by the CCP. So if you are investigated, you do not have the right, or they just would do whatever they want to you. So they might just ask you to provide information without necessary procedures. So there is just no respect of the procedures in the law enforcement. So that was what happened. And while Ping An just said, "Oh, we're fine, so don't worry." But the problem is, its stock shares have been dropping significantly. I think it's been dropping for 30 or 40% since this year. So it shows the market doesn't have confidence. And we know that Mr. Miles Guo has been saying that Ping An is going to, it's going to be over 3 or 4 years ago. I think that was in 2017. And at that time, Ping An's stock price was over 46, around 50 or something yuan per share. So this shows that, just anyone who works with the CCP is going to be doomed. Okay, you are not going to, be prosperous for eternity. You are going to be taken down by the CCP itself. And can you move to the next slide, please? So there is, a little bit of information about how Ping An make money. So 2 things. First one, they need the cattle herd, the herd of cattle. The cattle in Ping An's, in their own words, the cattle refer to the customers. You can see how much they disrespect the people, because they treat people as animals. They dehumanize their customers. They think you're just nothing, just a cattle with a bag of cash, so they can take away your cash in the name of selling you the insurance, right? That's the way they get money. So Mr. Miles said, okay, every day Ping An needs 1 million. I mean, it's just crazy, 1 million people to buy their insurances. But given the number of the insurance they're selling, that is 7,000 in total for Ping An, maybe more nowadays. So it makes sense, even though they still need so many people to be their cattle. They have hundreds of millions of customers, although I do not really trust any public information. Maybe they have more or less, we don't know. But it's a big company that has a large group of what they call the cattle, the customers. And the second thing that they make money is to make sure they have people taking care of them from the CCP's top leadership. So the pictures on at the top of this slide are all the former CCP's Politburo committee members, standing committee members, to be more specific. So those guys, they're all the sort of the shareholders of the CCP. If you imagine the CCP is a conglomerate or company or something, and they all have power and money, right? So one strategy that Peter Ma Mingzhe was using was that, hey guys, do you want to be the #1 majority shareholder? So ask Juana or ask Rosemary a question like that, you might be saying yes, right? Everybody will say yes. And this is the trick that Peter Ma is playing all the time. He seems to promise everybody, you're the biggest shareholder, so don't worry, right? And this is how he gained popularity, how he gained support, because his company is keep growing, and the share would, worth more money as people who are investing in the G series. You know how those things work, right? How the equity works. And even the Wen Jiabao, who he had his mother being the shareholder of Ping An, which is very interesting though. So you see her mother on the wheelchair on the picture on the left side. And you also see that the guy on the lower right corner saying, I was the number one, but that guy is Xiao Jianhua, who was being abducted from Hong Kong back in 2017. This guy was actually technically the number one majority shareholder of Ping An. And that is a very dangerous situation because everyone was promised, you can be the number one shareholder. And how come this guy, without any political background, he does have, but he doesn't have any CCP, titles or membership in the party. I don't know. He isn't the CCP's standing committee member. He isn't the board member of the CCP. So he just, in the eyes of CCP, he's just nothing. So he was disappeared. And according to Ismail School's revelation, I think he's gone now. He's no longer alive, right? Although we haven't heard about him for a long time. So that's what happened to the private entrepreneurs in China. You got rich and you get taken care of, right? That's what's going to happen. And also we see there is the picture of the Guangdong province, and Ms. Marusco says every top leadership of Guangdong province involved in this Ping An group, all of them, including the Ye family, who is the king of Guangdong in China, the family of Ye Jianying, the previous field marshal of the CCP's army. So this is basically the business that the Ping An group is doing. So in summary, it is sort of like a prostitute. It sells these bodies. I mean, it's company to all the CCP kleptocrats, the top leadership, and what they're doing is basically to make them, to make everyone happy, so everyone support them. So it doesn't have to choose which camp, the Jiang faction or other factions or Zhu faction, right? Although I think Ma Mingzhe is definitely loyal to the Jiang family because Mr. Michael said in his home, all the pictures of Peter Ma was with Jiang Zemin. Okay, that's how it goes. And can you go to the next slide, please? So we'll see. So let's see the ranking of this company. It's ranking number 16 in the 2021 Fortune Global 500 companies, and its revenue is about is almost $200 billion in 2021. And while according to the public data, I think its total value of its asset is less than 5 trillion RMB. It's less than $1 trillion.
1 billion.
1 billion. Oh no, I think that's trillion. The total asset value. This 5 trillion RMB. That's what Ms. Miles would have been saying. So that's a huge asset. But although 5 trillion is already huge, Mr. Balgos said that the total is around 22 trillion. Like $3 trillion of total assets. So you can see how big this company is. If it collapsed, then it'd be a big bomb dropping on top of the CCP's economy. So we can see the consequence of it. So the investigation of Ping An would definitely lead to something. And we hope, CCP will just, kill itself. So by bombing the Great Grenade, without throwing into the US, just bomb, in their hands so they can be killed. So this is the result we want to have. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then we want to talk a little bit about the subsidiaries of the Ping An Group. Thank you. So we see that the Ping An Group has been investigating in multiple dimensions, including the assets, including the healthcare, including also it does a lot of business, insurance, banking. It has a Ping An Bank, something like that, and also asset management, and all kinds of things like auto services, making cars or something, on smart cities, basically surveillance, big data, AI, things like that. And the two major things I want to talk a little bit about is in the Lufax and the Founder acquisitions, because these are the two big companies it acquired or it is going to acquire very quickly. So can we move to the next slide? So let's take a look at the Founder Group, because in this August, I heard news that the Ping An Group is going to buy the Founder Group. So what Founder Group is about? If you're following Mr. Miles Guo's revelation, you must be familiar with it, because Mr. Miles Guo's family's fund holds lots of share of the Founder Group, and the Founder Group is actually it's being restructured, so it's now called New Founder Group, not Founder Group, and it's actually a conglomerate founded by a top university called Peking University, a university of over 100 years in Beijing, and it is engaged in various business in things like information technology, real estate, finance, pharmaceuticals, commodity trading industries, and above all, we know it created a source code of the Han Chinese characteristics. Right, I think Rosemary explained that to us in the show before. So if you forgot to, you can go back to watch that. And so this slide actually shows some interesting thing that underlines why Peter Ma would want to acquire Founder Group. He has goals to serve. So the first purpose is that to satisfy Wang Qishan, because Mr. Guo said that he was given an order by Wang Qishan's former secretary, Zhou Liang, who was I think he used to be the governor of the People's Bank of China or something else, but he's holding a very significant position in the financial sector in the CCP's government. And he gave the order, according to Ms. Miles Guo, to Peter Ma, okay, you go get this company, okay, Founder Group. And this will make Wang Qishan happy. Why? Because this company Founder Group holds tens of thousands of mu of land. Mu is the unit in China in terms of size of land, and that means they hold a lot of lands, and they have the certificate. I haven't found a good translation for the 土地证, the certificate thing. So basically, if you have a certificate, you have the right to use the land, so you can develop land and you can use those land to do things you want. And this is good for Wang because he can use the money that gained from those land to pay back whatever the debts that they had before. And also you can use the money to basically defraud more money from the banks and also the trusts and whatever party that can provide money. So the land is very important to generate more money. That's why they want to run the land financing in China. And also we see that this serves the goal of satisfying Xi Jinping, because we know Xi's daughter is now the vice president of the Peking University, including Ms. Miles Guo, and also the head of the Chinese department there. And this is something that definitely she would like to see, because she also has a share as a standing committee member of the CCP in the Ping An Group. And lastly, given that Peter Ma has been doing very well, okay, I'm taking care of both the president and the vice president of Communist China, Xi and Wang Qishan. So the last one, to satisfy in here is the future candidate for the president, right? Han Zheng. So people might wonder why Han Zheng is picked here, because we know from Mr. Miles Guo's perspective, Han Zheng is probably going to be the next king, okay, of the CCP. So this is to satisfy Han Zheng, and he's interested in the education, right? Peking University is a good school, so he has a company called the Peking University Founder Education Group, where Han Zheng is interested in. So for Ping An to buy in the Founder Group, it benefits Han Zheng as well. So everybody is happy, right? He's playing a game of a balance, right? So this is how it goes. And the problem is only one slide to go. And
ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay,
yeah.
So I saw the 5 people on the top. Ping An, that's Peter Ma, right? On the top.
Yes.
So who is the first guy next to Wang Qishan? Because I know Wang Qishan, Jinping, and Han Zheng, but I don't know the first guy. Who's that person?
That's Zhou Liang. That's Wang Qishan's secretary.
Oh, okay.
So according to Ms. Mao, he gave Zhou Liang gave the order to Ping An, so Ping An would buy Founder Group, and we know Zhou Liang is actually the in charge of the Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission of the CCP. Okay, this is very important. So Ping An Group, the reason for Ping An Group can become so big, I think I forgot to mention, is that it plays a good role in buying and bribing those CCP officials, including those financial regulatory parties like the Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, the Securities Regulation Commission of the CCP. So everybody was bought off, every year. So in one word, Mr. Peter Ma is a master of BGY plan. He is so good at making people comply to what he wants. So he's good at that, and that's why he did his business so big. So can you move to the next slide, please? So this one is about the Ping An's work on Lufax. So Ping An actually owns Luxfa by like over 40% of share, right? It's owned 40% of a Lufax, and the rest of the shares are owned by companies. And there is one company in BVI, which I couldn't find the name. So if any fellow fighter can find, please leave message on the screen. So this company holds another 44% of the share of the Lufax, and in the name of quote Peter Ma's idea, and that is for him to give those shares back to his employees as rewards. Well, I don't think those CCP companies or CCP-related companies are at that philanthropic, because they are not. They don't treat the people as people. They treat even their subordinates. You ask them to just be 100% loyal, right? If they want to kill someone, you have to kill someone. If they want you to die, you have to die, right? That's terrible. Yeah. So I think Quanta said that's actually British Virgin Island. Yeah, BVI. Yeah, you are right about that. The place. So a BVI company, and that's why they set up the company offshore. And interestingly, she only owns 1.2% of the share, and he didn't know until recently that Ms. Bioscore said in public that he owns so little, while Ping An, Mr. Peter Ma, control most of the share of most of the Lufax. So what Lufax is about? So this company is kind of interesting. It's actually its full name is the Shanghai Lujiazui International Financial Asset Exchange Company Limited. The acronym is Lufax. So it's an online internet financial marketplace. Okay, and this is basically according to Ms. Miles Gore, a fancy casino. It doesn't open to people with income, let's say, less than $100,000 a year, and that's just a random cutoff. Basically, it's only open for rich people. And then you see, this is different from the Ant Group, Ant Finance, which it defeated in terms of being listed on the U.S. stock market, right? So Lufax was successfully listed. Yes.
I have another question. So from that means this Lufax, you can, if you are a member, then you can, through that company, you can invest in Vanguard, like BlackRock and the Morgan Stanley. Is that how that works? I still don't understand.
Okay. So very, very interesting. So very good question. So sorry for a little bit vague. So I forgot to mention that Vanguard and BlackRock, they also own shares of the Lufax, along with Ping An, the BVI company associated with Ping An and Xi Jinping's family. So the Vanguard and BlackRock, they're I think among the biggest institutional holders of the shares of Lufax. So the reason why I put those things here is that they match the controller, whoever that controls the companies making the vaccines. Also Vanguard and BlackRock, right? They're also controlling the Lufax. So we see those things are connected all the time. And what Lufax is doing is that it invests in lots of banks around the world, including Morgan Stanley, and HSBC. HSBC is more powerful, more influential in Europe or UK, while Morgan Stanley is big globally. So you see that Lufax is investing multiple financial institutions as well. And it does a lot of a P2P. That's what I knew. So it's only learning in this afternoon. So this company has ranged more than 200,000 P2P loans in a total worth of 2.5 billion US dollars. So that's a big number in terms of P2P. I guess that's probably a huge scam as well. So if CCP sells you any financial product, is 100% or 99.99% a fraud or a scam. So don't buy it. So this is how Lufax works, and it has close ties to multiple families. And we also know that Lufax, since it has ties with the Xi, so Lufax knows exactly what's going to happen. It got internal intelligence from the top of CCP. So it knew that Xi is going to hammer or drop hammer on Jack Ma's Ant Group, which is a lower level financial institute for relatively poor people like us, and so Lufax, was able to be listed on the U.S. stock market, given the U.S.-China relation was not good, given the U.S. is sort of delisting the Chinese companies, given the fact that Jack Ma is going to list his own company Ant Group on Wall Street, and given all those obstacles, Lufax was able to do it. So we see that Lufax has a very solid background, not just in the CCP, but also including or in cahoots with Western, something like the Swamp. I think Ms. Mouse will also mention that he has lots of ties to other big families in the West and big investment, big funds. So we know that this is something we should really pay attention to. And I think this is all I would like to share about my understanding of what is going on in other companies. I think Ping An, if you sum up, Ping An is a company that's too big to fall for the CCP, but we know it's having trouble. Every penny it makes is not based upon the real sales or performances. This is based on the fraud, based on the scam, based on the BGY, based on all kinds of financial ties with the powerful people, not just among the CCP, but also in the world. So it is basically a sucker of the ordinary Chinese people. It has a straw in everyone's blood vessel. They're sucking your blood, they're sucking your money, sucking your funds, and they're not good for the good people. We're not just against all the big corporates. We're against the CCP and their big corporates, and they're not standing for the people, and they're exploiting the people. So this is the everything I want to share, and thank you very much. Back to you, Rosemary.
Okay, thank you for sharing this information, because actually it does help me understand what is going on. So next, I want to invite Kwana to share what have you learned from Ms. Masco's live stream recently. Kwana, please.
Hi, thank you. So I think what left me with the most impression is what Mr. Mao said about the real estate. We know that the collapse of the Chinese economy started with the collapse of its real estate market. And I did study business in university, and I wish I paid more attention in Econ 101, which they talk about the financial crisis in 2008. So today I'll just use the financial crisis in 2008 as an example to compare it with the situation in Communist China right now. And I'll show everyone like how serious is the housing bubble in China right now, and like why is it so big? Why is the bubble so big and not bursting yet? So to explain what happened in 2008, first we have to do a little quick explainer about mortgages. And you might already know this, but if you are like just graduating university like me, you might not know this, but basically someone that wants to buy a house will often borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars from a bank, and in return the bank gets a piece of paper called a mortgage, and every month the homeowner will have to pay a portion of the principal. Next slide, please. So they will have to pay a portion of the principal plus interest to whomever holds the piece of paper. And if they stop paying, that's called a default. Next slide, please. And whomever holds that piece of paper gets the house. So that's the default. We'll hear about this term later. So the reason I'm saying that whomever holds the paper rather than the bank is because the bank, the original lender, often sell the mortgage to some third party. And the reason I say that often because it happens all the time. And traditionally, it was pretty hard to get a mortgage if you have bad credit or didn't have like a steady job, and lenders didn't want to take the risk that you might default on your loan. But all that started to change in like early 2000s. So in the 2000s, investors in the U.S. and abroad are looking for a low risk, high return investment, starting to throw their money at the U.S. housing market and thinking that they could get a better return from the interest rate those homeowners paid on mortgages than they could by investing things like treasury bond, which were paying very, very low interest. But big money, global investors didn't want to just buy up individual mortgages. It's just too much hassle to deal with. Instead, they brought investment called mortgage-backed securities. Next slide, please. So mortgage-backed securities are created when large financial institutions securitize mortgages. Basically, they buy up thousands of individual mortgages, bundle them all together, and sell shares of that pool to investors. And investors gobble up those mortgage-backed securities, and again, they paid a higher rate of return than investors could get in other places, and they look like really safe bet. For one, because home prices were going up and up in US at that time, so lenders thought worst case scenario, the borrowers default on the mortgages. We can just sell the house for more money, right? So at the same time, credit rating agencies were telling the investor these mortgage-backed securities were safe investment. They gave a lot of these mortgages-backed securities AAA ratings, which means the best of the best. And back when mortgages were only for borrowers with good credit, mortgage debts were actually good investment. But anyway, the investors were desperate to buy more and more of these securities, so lenders did their best to help create more of them. But to create more of them, they needed more mortgages. So lenders loosened their standard and made loans to people with very low income and very poor credit. So you will hear these terms called subprime mortgages. So next slide, please. And eventually, these some institutes started using what we call predatory lending practices to generate mortgages. They made loans without verifying income and offered absurd adjustable rates mortgages with payment people could afford at first, but quickly ballooned beyond their means. But these new subprime lending practices were brand new. That means credit agencies could still point to historical data that indicate mortgage bets was a safe bet, but it really wasn't. These investments were becoming less and less safe all the time, but investors trusted the ratings and kept pouring in their money. And traders also started to sell an even more risky product called collateralized debt obligation, or CDO. And again, some of these investments were given the highest credit rating from the rating agencies, even though many of them were made up of these incredibly risky loans. And next slide, please. While the investors and traders and banks were throwing money into the U.S. housing market, the U.S. price of homes were going up and up and up. And the new lax lending requirements and low interest rate drove housing prices higher, which only made the mortgage-backed security and CDOs seem like an even better investment. And if the borrowers default, the bank could still have the super valuable house, right? But not really. Rapid increases driven by irrational decisions. Well, this is the bubble. And the bubble have a tendency to burst. And this one did. People just couldn't pay for their incredibly expensive houses or keep up with their ballooning mortgage payment. So borrowers started to default. Next slide, please. Which put more houses back on the market for sale, but there weren't buyers. So supplies were up, demand was down, and home prices started collapsing. And as prices fall, some borrowers suddenly have had a mortgage for way more than their home was currently worth. Next slide, please. So some stopped paying. That led to more defaults, pushing prices down further. So as this was happening, the big financial institutions stopped buying subprime mortgages and subprime lenders were getting stuck with bad loans. So by 2007, some really big lenders had declared bankruptcy. And the problem spread to the big investors who was pouring money into these mortgage-backed security and CDOs. And they started losing money on their investment, a bunch of money, like a lot. But there's more. So credit default swaps that were basically sold as insurance against the mortgage-backed securities were also a thing. So if anyone heard of AIG, so that was a company that sold tens of millions of dollars of these insurance policies without the money to back them up when things were wrong. So as we mentioned, things went terribly wrong. And next slide, please. These credit swaps were also turned into other securities. So that essentially allowed the traders to bet huge amount of money on whatever the value of the mortgage security will go up or go down. They bet money on that. So all these bets, these financial instruments resulted in an incredibly complicated web of assets, liabilities, and risks. So that when things went bad, they went bad for the entire financial system. Next slide, please. And when major financial players declared bankruptcy, like Lehman Brothers, others were forced into mergers or needed to be bailed out by the government. No one knew exactly how bad the balance sheet at some of these financial institutions really were. These complicated, unregulated assets made it hard to tell. So panic set in, trading and the credit market froze, the stock market crashed, and the US economy suddenly found itself in a disastrous recession. But fortunately, the US and other related countries survived this financial crisis because governments stepped in to help, and the government enacted a program called TARP, T-A-R-P, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, also known as the bank bailout. This ended up spending a lot of money. Next slide, please. A lot of money, maybe thousands of billions of money to bail out the banks, and which was later expanded to help other people like automakers, AIGs, and homeowners. And the US also launched policies in the future to prevent future crises. So that's what happened in the 2008 US financial crisis. But what happened in China right now is more complicated. Next slide, please. So when we think about the housing market in China, we always think about like the real estate, the houses, and the land, but it's actually more complicated than that. The real estate industry chain included infrastructures, which include construction, building materials, concrete, steels, metal product, glass, construction equipment, and also it include landscapes and also decoration. For example, home appliances and furniture, decorative materials and paint. It also include electricity, which is a big thing in China. And it also included heat and gas, for example, oil, coal, and natural gas mining. And it also, the house delivery part also included finance and tax and banks. So the real estate industry is involved in all aspects of the national economy. Once the real estate collapses, it will be systematic and it will be fatal for the Chinese economy. So next slide, please. So China's economic growth over the past 40 years has been highly dependent on real estate, including land acquisition cost, real estate investment excluding land acquisition costs, real estate investment accounts for like 20% of GDP, according to Mr. Miles. And in Japan and in the US, it's only 3% to 4%. And during the real estate bubble of 1985 to 1990 in Japan, it was no more than 6% of the GDP. So you can see like 20% is so much more than that. So next slide, please. So next we'll talk about the real estate factor in economic risk. So first we have the credit risk. The commercial bank's credit assets are extensively concentrated in real estate and land. Those investment is extremely concentrated on that. And also we have people's asset. The people's wealth is extensively concentrated in real estate too in China. And also we have the local government. The local governments in Communist China are already dependent on land concessions as off-budget revenue, and they're also very dependent on the tax they collect on the housing market. And also we have economic growth. China's economic growth is overly dependent on real estate-related investment. And also we have another thing called national debt. And at the end of 2020, the total debt of the Communist China reaches 350% of GDP. And in the process of raising the debt, a large part of the population's income is used to pay the interest on the debt. So like the portion available for consumption is significantly reduced. Next slide, please. So now we are talking about the real estate crisis in Communist China. So fixed asset investment is another problem that we need to think about. So in 2018, the real estate investment accounts for a quarter of all the societal fixed asset investment and nearly half of the real estate related investment. And monetary inflation rate is also a big issue because over the past 30 years, the inflation rate in Communist China has been larger and greater than the economic growth. So people won't be able to pay for these overly priced house. It's just like using the most expensive price to pay for the shittiest product in the world. And next slide, please. So comparing the housing market value to the GDP ratio in percentage, we have in 2020 China, which is 500% in Communist China, are like the housing market value to GDP ratio is 500%, and in US in 2020 is 160%. And as we mentioned in 2008, when the US was in the housing market crisis, the percentage is 169. So still, with that serious housing crisis, the percentage is still much lower than 500%. So, and we also need to think about the statistical differences. In Communist China, only commercial buildings account for the housing market value. But in the rest of the world, it's not only commercial buildings. It's like rural ancestral homes are also count as those percentages. And next, we will look at the total value of real estate. So in Europe, America, and Japan, according to Mr. Miles, 80 trillion of all these countries combined are the value of the real estate. So 80 trillion, all these countries combined. But in Communist China, just one country alone is 150 trillion in real estate. So we can see that according to international standard, China's real estate bubble is huge. And a huge vicious chain reaction would have occurred a long ago. But why is it not bursting yet? I think one is because the CCP is using all sorts of ways to keep the bubble from bursting. For example, they're not allowing anyone to sell the house below the market price. And secondly, many people still believe the bubble won't burst. It's just too big to fail, just like 7 Miles said. And the Chinese are actually aware of the situation, the bubble situation, but they cannot find other alternatives either. Many people are concerned that the Chinese currency will depreciate, and other investments are even more risky than the housing market. This, such as the P2P, right? This caused them to allocate their money to the housing market as a safe haven. And they think that if the home prices did drop significantly, it would wipe out the most citizens' primary source of wealth and potentially trigger unrest in the whole country. So they don't think it will burst. And such an attitude by those people actually led the middle class, even the middle class of the Chinese citizens, to keep buying the houses because they believe that the properties in big cities will remain the safest investment in China. And next slide, please. Oh, we probably don't have a next slide, but the next point I want to talk about is the personal mortgages. So because the people believe that the house prices will keep rising and the housing bubble won't burst, actually 20 million households are now house slaves or mortgage slaves, with an average loan of 175,000 in mortgages per household. That's a huge number. So I know many of my relatives would buy the house when they can pay the first payment. As long as they can pay the first payment, they will buy the house and work their ass off to pay the other mortgages. So that's what Chinese people believe in the housing market because they lack other means to invest their money. And also, credit defaults have been a big problem in the last 2 years. It actually doubled in 2020. Do you remember the credit default? That was what we talked about when we were talking about the housing crisis in 2008. This is basically they cannot pay the money, so the bank have their house. So this is credit default. So it has been a big problem in the past 2 years. It doubled in 2020 comparing to 2019, with an increase of nearly 500,000 units of house being collected by the bank. So this already showed that more and more people are not able to pay their mortgages, just like what happened before the 2008 crisis. So what's even more different than the housing crisis in 2008 is that you can see the interrelated situation of the housing market and the CCP internal fighting. Just like Mr. Miles said, Ping An is also a very big shareholder in the real estate market, and it holds or participates in many large real estate companies. And when Ping An is under investigation or it collapses, it will for sure bring down a lot of CCP kleptocrats, and even it will burst the housing market bubble. So as we know that all these financial companies, those white gloves and the business of the CCP kleptocrats are not easily regulated, and what's publicly reported is still just the tip of the iceberg. And so how big is this bubble really? I don't know. And I look forward to Mr. Miles' next broadcast. Maybe it's tomorrow. And I think he will talk about the housing market and Ping An more tomorrow. So that's what I want to share. Thank you. I pass back to Rosemary.
Okay, I think this is very well said with all this information about the house bubbles, the crisis in year 2008. Actually, I went through with that. So what happened is actually it's because the financial, the market started crashing, and then the house price going down. Because when you buy a house, you have a down payment. Usually people pay 20%. At that time, they only ask 3%. But the house, the price went down like 20%, 30%. And then what do you borrow the money? If a house is $500,000, and if the house falling like 10%, it becomes 20%. It becomes like 400,000, right? But what if then someone paid paid 20% down paid like 100,000, and then they borrow $400,000, And when the house price went down to below this $400,000, and you own the money, the house was less money than what you own to the bank. And at that time, people start to walk away because then they'll say, okay, I will let the bank taking away my house, and I'm not going to pay the mortgage anymore. So that's what happened. I could let you know because I'm working in this area. House in California, the capital of California, Sacramento, the house went down 58%. Yeah, so that's also about the location. So in Barrio, maybe the went down like 20% and then come back, but it takes more than 10 years for people living in Sacramento, the house getting back to the original price, and that's what happened. So about China, I don't know that much about that market, but it seems it's too. It's the value and compared to the price, it's not in right proportion. That's what I'm thinking about, and I believe just like Mr. Miles said, the house market, no matter in United States or in China, it will go in bursted this bubble because think about how many people has taken the vaccine, and what Dr. Zilanko told us, what if the we just say 25% of the population disappears? What happened to the house? So just like Mr. Mouse said, the house market will crash, and we'll listen to Mr. Mouse's live stream tomorrow morning. I believe he will have a show tomorrow morning. Okay, so next we're going to start our next topic. So during previous broadcasting from us, we talked about this United States House Resolution 500, which is a resolution talking about during the 100 year of the Chinese, the CCP ruling China, and how many people killed and how to enslave the Chinese people. So today we're talking about Tiananmen Square. Could you put the poster about the Tiananmen Square for us? Yeah, so we'll keep this topic whenever we have time, because we just think that's so important. We want to share those information with the some people who doesn't know much about CCP. And also we want to combine what Ms. Miles said about what is going on, and why it caused the whole world in this situation. At least for me, I feel like the Communist Party has come to United States. So I'm going to read about this House Resolution 500. Whereas in the spring of 1989, following the death of pro-reform former General Secretary Hu Yaobang of the Chinese Communist Party, nationwide student protests demanding greater freedom were met with a violent crackdown, culminating on July 4th as forces of the People's Liberation Army butchered students and protests in what is now known as the Tiananmen Square Massacre. So this is the event, during that time, many communist country has fallen after this event has fallen apart, but not the Chinese people, even though the students fight for freedom. And we know Nancy Pelosi and all these U.S. The leaders, the kind of worked behind the scene and made a deal and let go of the CCP. That's why they survived for many years. So could you please play the video too?
文化人在中国比例是多少？知道吗 ？GDP 5%，文化人在中国占的1/1000、1/1000都没有。14亿中国人，你能告诉我有1400万文化人吗？1亿4000万都没有。是中国人这个木讷无情啊，所谓的浪漫根本不存在。这就为什么中国人能出现绿色、蓝色统一的2色军装，蓝色全人类没有过。这共产党这个流氓太狠了。就中国的代表文化标准的模样的人儿，1/1000分比都没有，但是他贡献了5%的文化 GDP， 现在容不下去了。他觉得你这些人代表了文化生活标准，那我共产党不也被你代表了吗？我得把你捏死。只有共产党能代表生活的模样标准和色彩。当然，这一算你才占多少比例啊？加一起，中国也就是几百万人，不到1000万人，都杀掉你都没问题。关键你还拿走了我5%的 GDP，5%的 GDP 是将近8000亿到1万亿啊！因为最高净产值就是文化产业，利润最高，比贩毒都高。贩毒是50倍到100倍，文化产业是10000倍、1倍的回报。文化产业是没有老少的，成本极低的。共产党盯住这个，那是有道理的。净值、净产业，而且你威胁到了我的这个东西。他把这些人财富全拿完以后，他要出现一批另的文化人，按照我的标准，按照我的生活方式，这个产业钱1分都不会少，而他全归他了。他不是给国家了，好不好？他给的是某几个家族。你记住，这会儿文化运动搞完，所有的东西，过去毛泽东搞的死人啊，红卫兵全送到乡下去了，大家就搞双休死，就拉球岛了，都归毛泽东一个人的利益。这回就归几个家族。文化产业这帮人被他灭掉以后，占的比例少，钱拿走了，几个家族拿走了。他最可怕的下一步，他带什么人来搞这个文化产业？这个绝对是习大神、王岐山、韩正这几个中南科几个人研究好的。这些人未来代表的时候，可就不会让你听这个歌，也不听那个了。这个重新的洗牌以后，钱、人、标准全拿走了，这对中国人来讲是个巨大的灾难。更重要的是，他为啥敢这么干？你知道吗？这就是中国人，因为中国人都羡慕、妒忌、恨呐，都想睡明星啊。没有比中国人在恨这个羡慕、妒忌、恨的社会上，共产党培养的仇恨，中国无处不在。我觉得中国共产党这仇恨无处不在。这回文化运动他敢这么干的原因，就是认为你99.99%的人都有愉悦感。这种仇恨发挥到临至，就是毛泽东的文化大革命，把所有的人叫羡慕地主的、想当官的、搞革命的大鸣大放以后，他能收回来。然后我再把你毒放出去，灭掉人，我把你送乡下去，军队在我手呢。这一次文化运动不允许你大鸣，也不允许你大放，一律闭嘴，发现没有？因为习没有军队的绝对控制权，习不敢大鸣大放，他觉得我一旦我收不回来了。但是我99%的人都99.99%的人都恨这些赵薇啊、马云呐、搞娱乐的冯小刚啊、张艺谋啊，所有人都得死，你都高兴，弄死才高兴。所以共产党利用了极小的概率、羡慕、妒忌、恨和多年培养在人类的、在中国人独有的仇恨，搞均贫富。哪时候是给你均贫富过？这是一套人类的思想上的一次地主运动、文化运动。它为啥不叫革命？因为你革命是要推翻政治体制，革不了任何命。运动只运动你一小部分人，而且针对性的定点击破。
Yes, so every time, when I listen to Mr. Moscow's live stream, I just feel I can learn so many things. Compared to 1989 Tiananmen Square, I do feel Chinese the society has changed. I believe in that time, those young people, young students still have some idealism and they want to fight for the freedom. But it seems over the year when the Chinese, the country become too more materialized and it changed. So I want to start with Feng Zishang. Could you share your thoughts about this?
Okay, Rosemary, it's so true. Once a while, just go back to 1989. So there are a group of young people full of hope to the democracy. So yeah, who said in China have no democracy? We did have a group of young people fight for that and lost their lives. So there are just short of period the people fight for that, fight for freedom. But it's also brutally killed by the CCP as well. So we, all our audience, if follow with us, in the previous show, we had a list the whole 100 year, how many people the CCP killed and how many events they using any kind of events to kill the Chinese people. Of course, the Tiananmen Square Massacre is the same. So in May of 1989, I mean, in the June 4th, nearly 1 million Chinese, mostly young students, crowd into the center of Beijing in the Tiananmen Square, and they just want for democracy, and they just want to, actually at the beginning, it's just for the memorial about the Hu Yaobang's death, and they just want to show the sympathy, show they lost a leader, at least someone supported the freedom. So this kind of protest, it seems to be just a peaceful students protest, but even this kind of students, young people's a kind of memorial, they just not allowed you to do it. So and more students join into this protest, and the CCP start scared. So they always scared. Any people have a little bit against their leadership or their power. So they never allowed any kind of threaten. So it shows the CCP is weak. So when the people weak, and they will scare everything. So even the young people go to street for the protest, and they end up to kill all of them. And in like 3 weeks, they keep doing the same thing. So they find all the students and kill them, and all the people on the way stop, even the parents as well. So it is really, really sad about all these young people. If it's supported in that time, it will be a really start of China's democracy, I believe. So, but any little hope, they all will stop. The CCP never allowed any people have a freedom, have a speech, have any protest to help them to speak out. So this is really sad history, and it's also the loss of our Chinese people's a chance to grab a democratic system to China, and and in that time, actually, the Western reporters also captured so many photos as well, and also in television and newspaper in United States, in Europe, you still can find some like a newspaper or pictures still remain. So, but the sad thing is, whole world ignored this thing, this Tiananmen Square Massacre, and then and they didn't give enough support. All these students, they cooperate with China CCP and covered it up, you can say somehow. So that's why these students dead for just covered up by not only CCP, but also the whole world just choosing to ignore. So that's why all the history keep going on, but not only 1989. Go back to 80 years ago. It's still every single time, every events we just show to the audience before. It's all about killing. So this regime is totally dictatorship, totally is no humanity. So that's why this regime can keep going on, and at the moment they just start already release the virus to the world. because they had 100 experience to cover up, and they know how to manipulate people, how to manipulate all the leaders in the world, in the country, and how to BGY them. So this like systematically they controlled China, and they also using the same skill. It's developed to all over the China. So you can say all this step by step and release the virus, and after that already prepared the vaccine, they up to the market, and you can say all the step one by one is planned. So it's they some people said it's not pandemic, it's plandemic. So I just thinking it's a plandemic. It is planned pandemic. So of course, so it's just like that. So the whole world need to realize this regime is need to be stopped. If you didn't stop this regime, you cannot stop the virus. You can't stop the vaccine, because it's all this backbone, all this thing is because of the CCP regimes exist, and they still keep doing the evil things, never changed. So if the world keep tolerance it keep ignore it, the human life has a more, price to pay. So at the moment we already paid, right? So we have already, since the first day of the virus released from the Wuhan, it is already 4.55 million people died in the world, and all these people could be alive, if there is no virus, if there is no CCP regime. So so only thing, we need to take down this regime. We need to stop it. So that's the only way the people come back to the normal life. All right, back to the Rosemary.
Oh, thank you very much. I think very well said. And we have to take down the CCP because it's kind of the reason let them survive for 30 years, and the CCP has getting away for what they would have done to the Chinese people. So next, I want to ask Simon Miles to share his thoughts about this, because I think he said a very good reason, and let's hear from him.
Okay, so first I would like to talk a little bit about the cultural movement the video. I have a little bit of comment on that, because I noticed that Mr. Miles says that the cultural movement is basically for certain families in the CCP to take over the culture industry, to take a position of the money, because we know that the celebrities like Vicky Zhao Wei is making lots of money, and basically the harvest the leeks. The leeks is a kind of a interesting vegetable that the Chinese people eat. You can have make it with a scrambled egg, which tastes good, and that that's kind of an analogy for people in China to say that if you harvest a leek, you harvest the people who are weak. They're easy to be manipulated. They're to be taken advantage of. Now the leek becomes the celebrities in China. They're the leaks that the CCP is harvesting. And the second point is that the Mr. Miles said that it will be the three guys, Wang Qishan, Xi Jinping, and Han Zheng, who will determine the next round of new celebrities, because they won't leave a vacant, right? There is going to be lots of vacancy. Who is going to be the antagonist? Who is being a good singer, right? And they will pick their own people. So that's the thing that I think Mr. Miles was really worried about when he was giving the live broadcast. So the name here, Xi, Wang, and Han Zheng, the three guys, they match the three people that benefit from Ping An's purchase of Founder Group. So you see that how those things are connected. So Peter Ma knows that these three guys are important. Two of them are holding power, and the third one, Han Zheng, is probably going to be the future power of the CCP, and why not BGY them in the first place to satisfy them and make them happy? So this is how the Chinese enterprises, private entrepreneurs are doing. They're like prostitutes. They don't have dignity. They have to bribe. They have to work very hard to make the leaders happy so they can survive, right? And the reason is they are not taking down this regime. If this regime is totally changed, if the regime really serves people, really serves everyone, including private entrepreneurs, it's going to be different. So this actually connects to the notion of the Tiananmen Square movement, because I really hate to talk about the details of what is going on. You can Google search Wikipedia. But I think there's one point I need to point out. That is the Western people some Western people who, like Rosemary just said, they let the Chinese Communist Party go. They didn't investigate. They didn't hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable for whatever the atrocity they did to the people protesting in Tiananmen Square in June 1989. So this is something that the whole world turned a deaf ears to, turned a blind eye to. So people, we remember that there was a very short period of sanction against the CCP following the June 4th, the Tiananmen Massacre, but there wasn't that much later. And the major political power at that time, I think they were focused on the Eastern Europe, the Eastern Bloc, their clubs. But for the CCP, they're not, because one reason is that the Western powers have already made a deal with the CCP when they established a relationship during the 1970s. For example, the U.S., picked the CCP as a kind of a ally against the Soviet, and the CCP would make a deal. So if I can be your ally, so what's your offer? So the Westerners say, okay, we won't, we'll make sure you stay in your place. So that's kind of deal they already made in the 70s or even the 60s before the Kissingerism, which also covered on our show before, so you can watch the Kissinger. And so Kissinger and also Kissingerism, those people, including the Bush families, although they're on the surface, they're really against the CCP atrocity. They condemn the CCP, but in reality, for all the politicians, you look at what they do, right? They were in cahoots with the CCP, and then they didn't do anything after the June 4th movement. Although there were bleeding, there were tanks, there were all kinds of violence, right? And this is something that is unbearable. You couldn't imagine it's something that was going to happen. So the whole world, it was, say slightest, they're doing appeasement with the CCP. But I think it's more of a case of colluding with the CCP or ignoring the criminals it's doing. If you do not stand up to the evil people, if you do not stop their atrocities, if you appease the aggressiveness, if you're in cahoots with criminals, and if you make a deal with the devil, which they're doing right now, hopefully the Wall Street guys are hoping the CCP is going to make sure the economy won't collapse, to make sure they won't lose money, those 300 families, according to Ismail School. If you're making a deal with the devil, then guess what? You're going to be, swallowed by the devil later. You think you got money for the Western rich people? You got money from the CCP? All right, that's your money now, but in the future, they were gonna invent more tools like the Beijing Stock Exchange, all those things to replace your, let's say, the NASDAQ. They want to build their own version of NASDAQ in China, in Communist China, so they can defeat you. Although you can make money with them a little bit, but in the end, the result is simple. It will be same as a student who already who were killed, were sacrificed in Tiananmen Square. That means, you're just over. So if you work with the devil, and the ultimate way is for you is to go to hell. So this is the fundamental reason. And we heard Maxwell has been saying, if you follow the CCP, your end would be the crematorium. You'll be gone, right? You'll vanish. So this is the lesson that we must learn from the June 4th, from the Tiananmen Massacre, because we shouldn't and we mustn't work with the devil, appease with the devil, or in cahoots with the devil. If anyone who is working with the CCP, they're our enemies. We don't care about whether you're right, whether you're left, whether liberal, conservative, whatever. If you work with CCP, you are our enemies. Okay. And if you're still working on CCP, we hope you can take back and reconsider that. That's our message you want to get to you. So for us, as people who are as the New Federal State of China, I think New Federal State of China was established last year on the same day, June 4th, was actually has taken the baton of the people or the foreigners from the Tiananmen Massacre, and we inherited their courage to take down the CCP. Why? Because we want to, and we want to avenge the deaths of people in Tiananmen Square Massacre. And after that, or even before and after, there are just thousands of or millions of people being killed, or hundreds of millions of people being killed by the CCP because of its terrible policy, including the the Great Leap Forward, including the Cultural Revolution, as well as the Great Famine that caused by CCP, all kinds of things. And also we need to take down CCP. It's necessary, as Hao Haidong has been saying, it's necessary for achieving justice. It's also necessary for us to achieve the rule of law and freedom. And we have to, as a young man, and also I think I concur with the Tiananmen Square participants and young man who got interviewed by a Western journalist who said, "Okay, why are we going to the protest?" And the young man said, "Oh, it's my duty." So I really think we have to, because it's, quote, our duty, end quote, to take down the CCP. So the message here is that we have no choice. We're in the war with the CCP. We have, the Western, because of the Western ignorance, they're cahoots or whatever, or both. And that made the CCP stronger. And the CCP got its weapons, it stole the technology, it has its own bioweapons, it has launched a financial war, bio war with the virus and vaccines. And this shows that the appeasement against the CCP is bound to bring you a karma, and that is the collapse of the economy of the whole world. We don't want this to happen. We don't want to people to suffer, and we don't want more people to die because of virus, and most importantly, the vaccines. So we need to unite and know who our enemy is and fight with it, okay? And that is the Chinese Communist Party. We need to take down the CCP. So this is a message that I feel like would get to our audiences. Thank you very much. Back to you, Rosemary.
Okay, thank you. I think you're so right about that. And when I say, the Chinese people, I mean people still live in China because under this regime, and they don't have the safety, and they will kill you if you want to against them. But we do have the you fight to save China, and that's what we're doing here, take down the CCP. So next, I want to ask Connor to share your thoughts. Connor, please.
Okay, thank you. So I think the Tiananmen Square Massacre, after that, the Communist China has become more and more repressive, and the police spendings and the spending to maintain social stability, as they said, is skyrocketed. And over the last 3 decades, stability maintenance, which is a government understatement of repressing collective protests, had become a top priority for local Chinese authorities. And government authorities harass, detain, and arrest individuals they deem as a threat to the regime, and a vast number of government have informally recruited personnel to watch over selected political descendants and citizen activists and public interest lawyers. Actually, when I was a child, I was living in Beijing, and one time my mom and I went to the museum near Tiananmen, and we met with a woman who were I don't know how to say this in English. Maybe it's appeal to the higher authority. It's 上访. The Wikipedia translate it as petition, but I don't think that's accurate. So that woman has writing all over her shirts, and she's talking to a policeman, and that policeman apparently wants to get rid of her, send her away, or put her in prison. And we actually approached to that woman with a camera, and suddenly there was one hooligan appeared out of nowhere. So that hooligan appeared to want to attack us in front of the policeman. They're together. So that person is hired by the CCP to watch over if anyone wants to film it or anything. So anyway, the government violence actually have in the past decades have left lasting scars on citizens' political identity. So parents who witness the violence usually tell stories to their children. So even people born long after the violence can still be affected. But I think in this case, I don't think many parents actually told their children about the Tiananmen Square Massacre, because they might know that it will be useless to tell their children that. They will know that the CCP has, even if they know that CCP have done those atrocities, but what can they do? The individual Chinese people are too weak comparing to the CCP. And it might be even causing cognitive dissonance, where they know that the CCP is evil, but they still need to behave in a certain way against their will in the Communist China. So having experienced or heard about the government repression before, people are forced to play it safe by behaving loyally towards their government, and censorship of public discussions wanted to erase people's memory of this repression. But they will not succeed because now we have Mr. Miles Guo, the whistleblowers movement, and the new federal state of China. And we now have the power and resources and intelligence to take down the CCP and will achieve the rule of law and the freedom and democracy. So that's what I want to share. I'll pass it back to Rosemary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for all of our guests today to share the information, share the research with our audience and me. And next, I want to ask if Feng Zisang, could you summarize for us for today?
Okay. So today we, according to Miles Guo's latest video, and all our guests talk about their thoughts about updating news about what's going on with Chinese economics and what's the relationship with CCP's economic influence to the world, to the United States. And our guest, 7 Miles and Kona, had a really good economic background, and they did a lot of display pictures and to show our audience, which is really good and easy to understand. And I learned as well. So thanks for you guys. And also we talk about the HRES 500, this from the US Congress, and about the 1989 massacre in Tiananmen Square, and also what is the consequence for that incident that happened in that time. So the whole world ignored that, and we lost the democracy of China. It could be we have democracy, and it could be have a different life for all Chinese people. So this is also a sad story about one of the sad story again, because we had 100 years history go back to, CCP did all this awful killing and the dictatorship. So it never stopped their evil behavior and the evil way of dictatorship all in China. So this is some short summarize about it, and back to the Rosemary.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you will summarize what we have done today. And we want to thank all the audience to join us. And if you have any question, if you want to, join our show, you can let us know. And please like us, subscribe to us, and we'll see you on next Saturday. Actually, it's this. Just a minute. We will see you on next Tuesday. Sorry, I was wondering today's. It's like the same because I don't even go out very much, so I'm kind of lost track of the time. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you to our guests, Feng Zisang, 7 Miles, and Kwana for your great message and information. Thank you. Goodbye.